Mentioned this a little bit last week, and you can keep that up there. That's an incredible thing. So, Feed One, what we're focusing on today, is not an effort of our church at all. So, this is completely separate from us. This is just an organization that I've been exposed to that I think is just doing incredible work. And so, I want to present you guys today with the opportunity to be a part of this. You've heard of the different adopt a child organizations, usually $30 a month will feed a child, and those are all great organizations. The reason you're learning about this one today is because it's better. And so anyway, I really do believe that. And so you can see, so Convoy of Hope is the main organization. We're part of this church is part of a group of churches called the Assemblies of God. And this is our compassion outreach ministry. And so it began to respond to natural disasters all over the world. They've been doing that for many years. And what's happened is over time, they've realized once they're in there responding to a natural disaster, once the disaster is over, people still have problems. They still have the issues they had before. And so they created this program called Feed One. And so they use the infrastructure that they set up when they went to respond to the disaster. They use the natural infrastructure of the country, often public schools, or if there's churches or different things like that. They use existing infrastructure to then funnel feeding programs, evangelistic programs where kids learn about Jesus, and many other things. They funnel that through there to then give life-giving support and change the trajectory of those people's lives forever. And so the way I just went to, you can see El Salvador is one of their sites. I was in El Salvador in March, and it was really a life-changing experience. I've been on other mission trips, and I've seen what God is doing in other places, and that's always an incredible opportunity. But what changed this time is I went to a place and I saw just one site. I saw a site where 800 kids were being fed every day, where they were learning about Jesus, where they actually had a huge garden behind their school, where they were all learning agriculture and learning how to grow their own food going forward. They were each receiving 2 meals a day, one at school, one at home. Their mothers were actually receiving nutritional training so that they can help keep their kids healthy. They were receiving job training, and then ultimately they would graduate from the program. And all of this was done for $10 a month per kid. And I was just blown away. As I'm looking at the vastness in El Salvador, they're currently feeding, at last I talked to the officials there, they were feeding 67,000 kids a day. And when you look at all the program sites there, they're currently feeding over 200,000 kids a day worldwide in 14 countries. Their goal is to see that go by the year 2021 to 500,000. And actually, right now, I've talked to the officials. They said that they have over 150,000 people already identified in places where they have infrastructure, where they could add them to that. They don't have to figure anything out. All they're waiting on is the people to adopt those kids to pay for it. So that's the way that it works. It's not one of those adopt a kid programs where you have a specific kid, and his name is like George, but so you don't have George and write George a letter and George writes you a letter, and those are great programs, but that makes it a lot more expensive to have your specific kid. And so this is really about feeding as many kids as possible. And so when you commit $10 a month, I'm feeding one kid until he grows up, and he's going to be cared for. And by the time he grows up or she grows up, they're going to know how to care for themselves, and I will have ended the cycle of poverty and hunger in their family permanently. And so that's the ultimate goal. You'll see in the video later, while I was in El Salvador, I was talking to one of their program heads, and he said that Convoy of Hope wants to feed people's kids, but they don't want to feed their grandkids. And what that simply means is this isn't a program that's just going to stick around forever and be a consistent thing. It's actually an empowering program, so that by the time it's finished in one person's life, they're finished with needing other people to feed them. And so it's a life-changing thing. There's requirements that go with it. When they receive the feeding program, they have to also be part of the biblical training program. And so they receive a Bible. And where I was on a public school campus, you had public school teachers who were teaching kids about Jesus while they were feeding them with the meals that people were providing. What an incredible opportunity. So we're going to talk more about that at the end. So as you came in, you probably noticed all the Feed One envelopes everywhere. We'll give you instructions on that at the end. We'll kind of collect them all at the end. So don't worry about them for now. I'll show you how to fill them out. Don't stick money in them. This isn't like a start paying now. We'll just show you all that at the end. So we're going to jump into the scripture today, and we're going to talk, and then we'll be out of here before you know it. So last week, we're kind of continuing on last week's idea. Last week, we started this discussion. We talked about the fact that we all come preconditioned in life with what we called a market-based personal value system. Okay? We all come with a market-based personal value. What that means is that there's a whole lot of factors, different factors. Some of them are performance-based. It's how you do what you do. Some of them are inherent. It's like your race or your all these other things, your location in the world. It's just things that you inherit. But there's all these different factors that then figure together to determine your value to the rest of the human race. Now, uncomfortable as that idea is, we just want to state it clearly. Certain people matter to society more than others, right? And many of you have experienced this. For many of you last week, it was like a tough truth to go. Maybe you face the fact that you do. There are certain people that matter more to you than others. And there's a whole lot of different reasons for this. And some of these reasons are more innocent. Some of it is just a lack of information. Some of these reasons are a little bit gross when they're said out loud. How many of you guys had one of your reasons, it kind of became real to you and you went, oh, that's gross. I don't like that about me. And that's okay. We have to face the truth before we can do it. We have to understand that this whole thing, this market-based human value system is wrong, but it's true. All right? And so we talked last week about avoiding the trap of guilt and shame and feeling, just beating yourself over the head about it. We established that it's kind of like your shoe size. It's you, but you didn't decide it, right? Did anybody here go, you know what, I need to, there we go, now I'm at 12, right? You didn't decide your shoe size. It was something you inherited. It was influenced generations before you were even alive. And this is the same way. This is something, it was in the air that you grew up breathing. It was in the water that you grew up swimming with. It was in the conversations that you and your parents and your grandparents and them before them and them before them going all. This is something that we grow up, we inherit. It becomes part of our culture. But now that we recognize it, Jesus invites us to something better. So last week we talked about the fact that Jesus came to call us away from this market-based personal value system, right? And to call us towards something new, right? We established the fact last week that we are valuable as people because we're made in God's image. That is where our value rests. Every human being is a sacred son or daughter of the eternal God. You see, you are valuable this morning, not because of what you do or what you look like or how good you are at any of it. You're valuable because of whose you are. I'm valuable because of whose I am. And so then one of the things we talked about is that Jesus now invites us as his followers into this value system. He invites us to begin to value other people the way that God does. And so that's how image-based values should cause us to think and feel. And that's a whole ball of wax. We talked about that. You can go back and rewatch last week if you want. But that's how it should cause us to think and feel. But the question we're going to tackle today is, what should it cause us to do? If we do embrace image-based value, what should that cause us to do differently? And so I want to give you a few statistics before we go forward, and then we're going to jump back into this idea. First of all, approximately 21,000 people die every day because of hunger-related causes. right? And I want to go slow with statistics because we hear a lot of statistics that just go, right? And I want that to sit with you for a second, what that really means in reality. 21,000 people. That means that every 3.6 seconds, someone new will die from a hunger-related cause. Get your head around that. Because those are real people. Those are real mothers' children. Those are real fathers' children. Those are real siblings. Every 3.6 seconds. 1 out of every 3 people on the planet is dealing with some level of food insecurity. And what that means is that either they're actually starving and they could die from starving, or more likely they're just chronically malnourished. They're just malnourished all the time, and so they're unhealthy. Or the next thing is that they just never know when their next meal will be. And there's a lot of people that is the reality of their existence. They may eat today, they may not eat tomorrow. They may not eat the next day, and then they may eat again. And then they just never know. Every meal they eat, they don't know when the next one is going to be. Now, again, for most of us, this is not new information, right? I mean, the exact numbers are new probably, right? Because they're always changing. But the concept is not new. We know this problem exists. How many of you guys have seen the pictures? You've seen the bloated bellies. You've seen the orange discolored hair. We've seen the videos. And we've heard similar statistics over the years. And so here's one of the problems of this is that when a problem is this pervasive, it can overwhelm us and cause us to feel like nothing can be done. How many of you guys have felt that way? Yeah. We feel like nothing can be done about this. This is just the way the world is, and it's tragic, right? See, when the need is this big, we feel like, how can we engage without being overwhelmed by the problem? And so what do we do? We try not to think about it, right? How many of you guys, be honest, that's your strategy. It's been my strategy at times. I just have to not think about it. I have to put it out of my head and think about something else. And so I want to read you another parable from Jesus. This is in Luke chapter 15. Same passage we read last week, just a different story Jesus told. It says, so suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Doesn't he leave the 99 in the open country and go after the lost sheep until he finds it? And when he finds it, he joyfully puts it on his shoulders and goes home. And then he calls his friends and neighbors together and says, rejoice with me. I've found my lost sheep. And I tell you that in the same way there will be rejoicing in heaven, more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who do not need to repent. And so the first point I want to make today is this. God's love for people is not practical or fair. God's love for people is not practical or fair. Now, there's so many things in life that we should do even though they're impractical, right? Can anybody think of any? Like displaying love and affection for your spouse is often impractical, isn't it? Right? Right? It's impractical. Flowers are not practical. I don't know if you realize this. Once they cut them off and sell them to you for money, they what? They die. It's very impractical. Women, is it still nice? Right? Does it still work? Yes. Right? Romantic dinners are not practical. Right? One of those microwave Hungry Man dinners, they just come in the tray, you peel. That's practical, right? But that is not nice. Don't try it, right? Candlelight is a very inefficient form of lighting, right? But I promise you, men, you're going to look a lot better when the lights are dimmer. Use candlelight. It's inefficient, it's impractical, but it's good. Driving a convertible down a country road in the fall is not practical. But how many guys have done it and it's good? Right? A motorcycle sometimes on a windy country road is not practical, but it can be very good. I don't know if you realize this, if you're young, you're not married yet, right? Dating is a very impractical way of trying to find a spouse. It's not practical. You know what would be much more practical is to have Pastor Jason make you a spreadsheet, a personal spreadsheet of all your information. And now you just go to people and you just exchange sheets and you go, we're not a good match. Look at your D4 and your D6 and your F3. It's not you. It's not me. It's your cells. They don't match, right? And then one day you exchange with somebody and you go, whoa, baby, look at your C1, C3, and L5 through 12. I hear wedding bells, right? No, you wouldn't date that way. That would be practical. But isn't the impractical way so much better? You see, most of the good and beautiful parts of life are not practical. But we know this, when it impacts people that we're close to, we recognize how practical it can be to be impractical, right? You ever done something really impractical and really nice for somebody, and there's a really nice response, and you recognize how practical it can be to be impractical. In fact, unforgettable experiences in life are usually highly impractical. If you can think of some of the most unforgettable moments in your life, almost without fail, all of them were highly impractical. You see, the problem that we have is that for most of us, we have a fairly small number of people for whom we're willing to be impractical. And even with them, the amount of time that we're willing to be impractical for and how often we're willing to be impractical with them is even very limited. But in this parable, Jesus is calling us to a love for people that is always willing to be impractical. I mean, let's break this down. Let me give you some sheep sense, right? And so here you go. I know you're not shepherds and you don't recognize this, but if you're a shepherd and you have 100 sheep and one sheep wanders off, leaving the 99 that you do have to find the one is not practical. Why? Someone tell me, why? Not the others might run away, the others will run away. You know why? Because they're sheep. They're dumb. That's what they do, right? They just wander off. Do you know what a sheep does? It doesn't ever look up, right? Have you guys ever looked a sheep in the eye? No. Their head faces the ground, they're chewing on the grass, and they just follow wherever the grass leads them. So they always wander off. That's why he used this example. Every shepherd was used to it. Every time a shepherd did a head count, he knew what was next. I got to go find the one. And then he'd come back with the one, and he'd go, now I got to go find a different one. And then he'd go get that one, and he'd bring it back. Now I got to go get a different one. And on his whole life was going to find the one. That's what he would do. And if you're thinking this and you go, you need to just cut your losses, right? How many of you guys have already thought that? Cut your losses and just keep the 99. But that's what sheep do, right? At some point, you're going to have 0 sheep if you begin cutting your losses. And so here's the thing. Putting 99 sheep in greater risk to rescue one seems foolish until you're the one, right? How many of you guys have ever been the one, right? How many of you guys are like, I might be the one right now. Pray for me, Bob, right? When you're the one, it's amazing that Jesus stops at no ends to get you, right? It's amazing that he continues. It's amazing that people continue to love you. It's impractical until you're the one. And again, I want to say this. At some point, all of those sheep will wander off and need to be found. That's what they do. That's actually why the shepherd had a job. If it weren't for that, he's not needed, right? Because sheep feed themselves. Sheep dress themselves, don't they, right? They also dress you if you do it right. They feed themselves. They dress themselves. I don't know if you know this. They go to the bathroom by themselves. They don't need you to wipe them or anything like that, right? They don't need anybody to put them in bed or wake them up. They're almost self-sufficient. The only thing they can't do is keep from getting lost, okay? So that's the whole reason they have a shepherd. Finding lost sheep is what shepherds do. In fact, this parable had special meaning because it was so much, that was their whole job. If you had 100 sheep and one got lost, even if it was dead, you had to go find the pieces of it and bring the pieces back to the owner to show them to confirm it. There was no writing off a sheep at all. However many sheep, it's like the library. How many sheep you check out is the number of sheep you need to check back in at the end of your shift, okay? So that's how it worked. Now here's the thing. Jesus is using this parable to show us that God's love for us is completely impractical, but it's also heartbreakingly beautiful. Think of all the times that you've wandered off. Some of you wandered off for a relationship. They're so dreamy, right? And all of a sudden you look up and you go, whoa, how did I get here, right? You wander off for some high or something, and you end up also, now you're completely addicted and you're so lost, you're so far from where you came from, and you go, oh, how did I end up here? Right? And there's all these things that end up separating us from where we should be. But we learn from this that God is, Jesus is just telling us, hey, God's like the shepherd. And they knew immediately, oh, well, the shepherd never stops looking for the sheep. Even if he's just bringing back chunks, he's bringing it back home. He's saying that is what your Father in heaven is like for you. It's so beautiful. And then at the same time, Jesus is inviting us into that same kind of value system. And we have to understand that to love people the way that God does not just mean the feelings that you have inside. And sometimes we go, well, I love you, right? You guys ever said, I love you, but, and then what comes next shows you that they don't love you, right? And so I love that guy, but he's really stupid. And so anyway, it's not just feelings, it means responding the way that God responds. And so he's showing us, here's how God responds to people that he loves all the times they wander off, all the times they disappear, all the times they blow it, all the times they do it. He keeps going to get them. And so here's the problem that presents for us. How many of you guys already see the problem? Like, Bob, I already see it. There's a problem here. You cannot do this shepherd-type response for everyone, everywhere, all the time. How many of you guys, be honest, already thought that, right? I mean, there's some people, I'm just writing off, Bob. I just want you to know that already, right? We cannot do this all the time for everyone. And this creates a problem for us because we were raised to value fairness, right? How many of you guys ever ripped your pants and then you had no pants and you told your parents, I need new pants. And they said, if I buy you pants, I got to buy everybody pants. I can't buy everybody pants. You just got to figure out how to wear those pants, right? That's a little bit of an exaggeration, but as parents, we hide behind that. Let me just tell you, if you're a kid here, I'll just blow this for everybody, right? It doesn't matter what it is. Well, if I buy it for you, I got to buy it for everybody. I can't afford it for everybody, so I'm not going to buy it for you, right? And it doesn't matter, like if your kid breaks their bike and you go, well, I can't buy a bike for you because if I buy a bike for you, I got to buy a bike for all the kids. And I can't buy a bike for all the other kids don't need a bike. I know, but it's still, that's the point. It's got to be fair, right? And so we're raised to believe that everything's got to be completely fair. And for some reason, we develop this idea that we should not do for one what cannot be done for everyone. You know, we kind of think like Oprah. We go, you get a car, and you get a car, and everybody gets a car, right? But you know what? Sometimes everybody doesn't get a car, right? We're not Oprah. And so when we find ourselves in situations where we could do something for one, we then feel this question, should I do it because I can't do it for everyone? And so we kind of dismiss ourselves from the situation. And so I want to ask you a question. Is it fair for the shepherd to leave 99 sheep unattended to go look for one? Is it fair to the 99 that stayed? No. They're alone. They've got no shepherd now. They're vulnerable now. It's not fair to them. But don't you love that he does it? Isn't it good? You see, fairness is never a word used to describe the gospel of Jesus. The gospel is the essence of unfairness. I don't know if you've gotten your head around this yet, but Jesus was perfectly good, and yet he was punished and died. We, on the other hand, are flawed. We are sinful. We are bad, and yet we get to experience his reward while he endured our punishment. If we got what was fair, we get death followed by final judgment. So thank God that he's unfair with us, right? Thank God that he's unfair. And to go further, grace and mercy, by definition, will never be fair. Just to help you understand, what mercy is not getting what you deserve. Okay, mercy is you deserve this, but you don't get this, and it's usually like this, or right. And so mercy is not getting the judgment that you do deserve. Grace is getting favor and good things that you don't deserve. Okay, so same kind of concept, but it's different kind of direction with it there. So grace and mercy, by definition, will never be fair. It's not fair when God has mercy on you. How many of you guys are glad he does? Right? It's not fair when God gives you grace, but we're glad that he does, right? And so it's not fair. Grace and mercy are not fair when God pours them out on us, and it's not fair when we pour out his grace and mercy on others. When that person wrongs you and you pour out mercy, it's not fair, but it's good. So we do for one what cannot be done for everyone. And then I want you to catch this. And then we trust the vastness of God for the rest. You see, you don't have to have a strategy for saving your whole neighborhood for Jesus. Just be the shepherd and go after the one that he's put in front of you right now. You don't have to have a plan for how to end childhood hunger worldwide. Just be the shepherd and do for one what you wish you could do for everyone, and then trust God with the rest. You don't have to be the support structure to every broken and hurting person in the world. Just love the one that God seems to be giving you influence with right now, and trust him with the rest. You see, and that brings us to the next question that we're going to jump into, and that's, with so much need in the world, how do we know where and when to get involved, right? How many of you guys have ever wondered that? Like, how do I know when it's my responsibility? How do I know when it's my moment to jump in? And so we're going to read a great passage of Scripture. Galatians 6, 9, and 10 says this: let us not become weary in doing good. How many of you guys have ever been weary in doing good? How many of you guys have ever been wearying in doing bad? Right? And so anyway, let us not become weary in doing good. For at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. Therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all people, especially to those who belong to the family of believers. So there's actually a whole lot in that verse that we're going to break down. But the first point I want to make from that verse is this: opportunity is often the invitation from God to dispense his grace. So that's how you know when it's God's moment, when God is calling you, when God has assigned you, in a sense, to pour out his grace, is if you have opportunity. And I love the caution that the verse starts with. Don't get worn out trying to do good. Because here's just the reality. One of the biggest causes of emotional fatigue, or just material fatigue, meaning you don't have enough stuff to keep up with the problem. So one of the biggest causes of emotional and material fatigue is when we carry burdens for situations that we have no opportunity in. And I say, guys, most of us are carrying burdens this morning for situations that you have no opportunity or influence in. There's all these things happening around you in the world that you're sitting up at night worrying about, stressing about, feeling bad over. You're feeling bad right now because there's all these things happening that you just can't fix, and it just wears you out. It fatigues you, right? Because we don't have an opportunity, right? And so some of you actually know individual people who are like those lost sheep who've wandered off, and now their life is a total mess. And some of you are carrying weight for these people right now. You're worrying for them. You talk to them, but they don't listen. You've tried everything in the world to help, but it all falls flat. And it's frustrating and it's exhausting. And here's why. Because you're trying to move a car that you don't have keys to. This morning, my wife left the house before me, and I usually leave first, so it got backwards, right? And so she said, hey, I can't leave. Your car is behind mine. So you know what I did? I moved the car. It wasn't hard. I went out there, I put the keys in, I turned it, I pulled it this way, turned it off, got out, went inside. It's pretty simple, right? Who has ever, and it's only going to be dumb people, so no one's going to volunteer their hand, right? But who has ever tried to move a car that you didn't have keys to? I've done it. It's usually like a funny prank, right? But you try to move a car, and so you get a few of your friends, you try to lift it. Who's ever tried to lift a car, right? You know, and you convince yourself, I saw it come up a little bit. It didn't come up, all right? And so you lift it, you try to scoot it. Who's been dumb enough to try to bounce it? Maybe if I get it bouncing, I'll bounce it over. That doesn't work, right? There's all these things, right? And so maybe you even go, you know what? We need momentum. Let's get a running start. And you run at it. You know, you just hit it, right? You can't move a car that you don't have keys to, right? It's hopeless from the start. And there's so many situations in our life that are like that. All right? There's people who have problems. There's situations in societies that are that car, and you simply don't have keys to that. And this is a huge hurdle in the social media age that we live in. Because we have exposure to problems and people that we have no real influence over and no opportunity with. You see, through social media, you know of the problems of thousands of people at any given moment, and that is historically unprecedented. I want you to understand that. No generation before now knew of all the problems that were going on in Texas and here and there and all that. You knew about what was going on around you. You knew about the problems of the people that you knew, right? And that's how the world worked, and it's changed. It used to be, and this is going to sound silly, but it's profound, okay? It used to be that people were only in your life when they were in your life. But that is not the case anymore. People come into your life through one form or another, and because of social media, they never leave. Right? How many of you guys know about cancer that someone has that you have not seen in person in 25 years? Right? Because you know what's going on with everybody you went to grade school with. Right? 25 years ago, once you left grade school, you know who you didn't talk to anymore? Anyone from grade school. And then you had all these friends from high school, and they were in your life during high school. And then you had friends from college, and they were in your life during college, right? And you had all these different stages of people in your life, but they all pretty much left your life once you left that stage. Now, because of social media, you're still friends with all your grade school friends. You're still friends on social media. You're not real friends. They're not in your life. You're never going to see them again. Let me break that to you. I'm sorry, right? You're never going to see them again. They may like your status, right? Whatever it is, but you're never going to see them again. But yet you know all the painful details of their life because they're putting it on Facebook, and you've probably seen their GoFundMe campaign, right? And so, you know when they get sick. You know when they have a kid. You know when their kid is sick. You know when their car gets stolen. You know when all that kind of stuff happens. You know when they get divorced. And how many of you guys you see that stuff and you feel like, I wish there was something I could do. You see, through social media, the circle of problems that we're exposed to is ever expanding. But in reality, you have little or no influence or opportunity in most of those situations. You just don't. But exposure to all of that causes you to have problem fatigue. And most of us live with a consistent state of problem fatigue. We've become numb to problems because we've seen so many. Or we're just too exhausted to deal with it when then real opportunities come along in situations where we do have influence, just because all we can see is the sea of problems that we know of. And so I want to help you with this morning. I want to help you with this. I want to help. Hopefully this morning you're going to walk out of here feeling freer than you felt in a long time, ready to engage whatever God has in front of you. So the first thing I want to help us do is we need to ask when we see a problem whether or not we have a real opportunity here to do good. That's what the scripture said, right? When you have opportunity to do good, especially starting, he said, with those who are part of the family of God. So the first question is, do I have an opportunity here to do good? And the next question needs to be this: what is the nature of my opportunity? Because there's a lot of different kinds of opportunities. There are some opportunities that are for real material support. Maybe there's a widow whose car is broken and you know how to fix it and you can give material support. You're going to fix her car. Maybe you're going to help a friend with their electric bill. Maybe someone's refrigerator died and you helped them get it fixed or get a new one or whatever else. That's real material support. So there's going to be opportunities where there's going to be a material need and you're going to have an opportunity to meet that material need, and you can. The next kind of opportunity is, this is an opportunity for me to just encourage this person as they navigate this. And this is one of the ways that we miss it so often, is that we think the only way to help is to give somebody something, and so we're so overwhelmed. But often, our opportunity is just to be an encourager. Our opportunity is to stand next to somebody, to help them know that they're understood, to attune to their situation, and let them know, hey, listen, I see you, and that stinks. I'm really sorry. I know I can't change it, but I'm with you in this. And often, that's our opportunity. Right? Sometimes our opportunity is this person is looking for direction, right? How many of you guys have ever had someone coming to you looking for direction? They've asked advice, right? And so sometimes people are looking for our direction. The next question to ask, if they are looking for direction, is, are they going to act on this direction if I give it to them? How many of you guys have ever had people come to you and ask you for advice, and you know before they finish the sentence, they're not going to do what I tell them to do anyway, right? And so are they going to act on it? So do they need direction? Are they going to act on the direction that I'm going to give? And then another good question to ask is, am I qualified to give direction on this? Right? How many of you guys have people telling you what to do and they don't have any, they're not qualified, right? And so you got to stop and go, hey, listen, there's a lot of times where people have a problem and you go, you know what? I want to help you find some advice or some direction. I can't give it to you because I'm just as messed up as you are. So, I mean, I could tell you something, you could try it, but then you'd be just like me, and that's not any better, right? And so we got to ask these questions. And then all of these questions, as we answer them, what they're going to do is they're going to show you what is the nature of my opportunity here. They're going to help you know when you have opportunity and to know what your opportunity is. And so I want to say this. I am not giving you permission to start just blowing people off. Right? That's not what this is. We're not just blowing people or their problems off. This just means that we need to be clear about what this opportunity is in any given situation. Because again, so often what I've found in life, most of the time, my opportunity with somebody is just to be compassionate. To say, man, I'm so sorry. I really am. I'm so sorry. I'm not going to try to cheer you up because that stinks. I'm sorry. And I can't fix this, but you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pray for you. I'm going to pray for God to do what only He can do. And then for your part of it, what you've got to learn to do then is then leave that with God, knowing that He does have a solution for that, even if the solution isn't you. But what we tend to do is, well, I'll pray for you, but then we just keep that problem with us. We go, I don't have any solution for this. I can't be part of this, but I'm going to keep your problem. I'm going to do you a favor and just carry this with me now. And now both of us will be weighed down, right? But you got to recognize this isn't an opportunity for me. I'm sorry that you're in this. I'm going to pray for you. I'm going to trust that God has a solution. It's not me. And so since it's not me, I'm going to entrust this burden to God. And I'm going to leave it with Him. Because here's the thing, if we're all weighed down with problems that we have no opportunity with, then our capacity to respond to real opportunities will be diminished or even destroyed. There's so many of us that are so weighed down with problems, we've got no keys for that car, and then we've got all these opportunities in front of us that we cannot engage with because of that. And so I want to be practical for a second. When you encounter the personal and the material problems of people around you, here's what you do. You stop and you listen and you pause and you honestly pray, God, what is my opportunity here? And then you respond in line with the opportunity that God is giving you. And answering those questions will help you determine when real opportunity exists. And where, here's the great part, where opportunity exists, it's an opportunity to follow Jesus in godlike love. It's an opportunity to leave the 99 and go after the one. To be impractical for one. To do things for one that you could never do for everyone. And man, in that moment, what a privilege it is to be able to love people that way, to actually be loving them in God's name, to be a funnel and a conduit of the great and impractical and hauntingly beautiful love of God, to be a funnel and a conduit of that into that person's situation. And so the last point I want to make, though, is this. Engaging with God-ordained opportunities sets a process in motion that brings harvest. Again, I love how that verse says it. Don't get worn out, because at a proper time you'll reap a harvest if you do not give up. And I want to make this clear. There's always seasons between our opportunity and the development of the harvest that we hope for. Okay? So you're going to intervene, you're going to do something, and that's sowing a seed, and that seed has to do what? Grow. Right? And that's why Paul uses a crop metaphor here. You would not plant a corn seed and come back in 10 minutes and go, dang, nothing happened. I thought something was going to happen. Right? You know that there is time and process that needs to take place there. So when we seize opportunity to love hurting people, we must realize that it's God that brings the harvest and not us. Right? And again, there's usually time between what we do and what comes of it. But I want you to understand this. If God has given you opportunity, and if you are faithful with it, then you got to trust His process. Because when God gives opportunity, and when we dispense His grace, that seed is then sown into soil that God Himself is tending. And that's the metaphor here. That God is tending this soil. You're sowing a seed into it, and now He's in charge of bringing that to fruition. So there will be a harvest. Like interpersonally with people, when you have those opportunities to dispense God's grace. Like when He says, don't get worn out doing good. Just be faithful to what the opportunity is. Sometimes we don't trust. We don't trust the process. So how many of you guys do this? You sow a seed, you do something, you have an opportunity, and you take the opportunity, and then you step back for about 8 seconds. You go, oh, it didn't work yet. And then you want to do something else, and you go, oh, it didn't work yet. And you're like, you've planted 800 seeds in one hole, and you're wondering, why hasn't anything worked yet? You got to step back, and you've got to trust God. And then if another opportunity comes along and God gives you one, take that one too. But you've got to trust His process and trust Him, because a harvest at the appointed time, harvest will come. And some of us need to be reminded of this for our kids and for our neighbors and for our spouse and that beloved friend, that your grace is planting seeds that God Himself is tending. And so then finally, as it applies to our opportunity this morning with Feed One. So we got to ask ourselves, first of all, is the need real? Yeah, I don't think anybody would debate that the need of hunger in the world is real. But then, is there an opportunity? I'd say this opportunity this morning is real. the hope for what will happen if we give $10 a month to feed a kid, the hope is real. There is fertile soil there that will produce a harvest if we invest a seed in it. And so I want you to hear this. Every dollar that we invest in this is going to have eternal harvest. Like when you adopt a kid and you say, yeah, I'm going to feed one. I'm going to do $10 a month. When you do that, a kid who has been hungry up until now will not be hungry anymore. Like it's definitely going to change. There's definitely a harvest there. And they will learn how to grow their own food. They'll learn balanced nutrition and all this kind of stuff. Their mothers will be empowered to earn money and care for them in a better way. And listen, when you invest that, the cycle of poverty and hunger will be broken with them. And even greater than that, they're going to meet Jesus through this process. So your investment isn't just going to be temporary, it's going to be eternal. And so the grace of God that we get to pour out here in this way today will change lives now and for all eternity. And so I want you to know, guys, what the shepherd did for the one, it was not practical, but it was unimaginably beautiful. It was good. And listen, you cannot change the life of every hungry kid in the world, but you can do so for one. And that is unimaginably beautiful, and it's good. And so what we have to learn to do is we have to mentally let go of all these issues that we stress over, that we have no keys for that car. Right? Some of you need to learn that line for your spouse, and you guys need to help each other. Right? And you need to see the other one and you go, hey, you know what? You don't have keys for that car. Yeah, some of you need to say that to yourself 100 times a day. Hey, I don't have keys for that car. I need to move past it. I need to commit it to the Lord, leave that request with Him, and then move past it. But then once you do, it's not just so that you can just be free of everything. Let go of that so that you can then grab a hold of the real opportunities that you do have. So if the need is real, if the opportunity is real, and if you have the resource to respond, then you do so. And so what we're going to do as a church is we're going to sow into this soil that God is tending. And what's going to happen is only eternity will show us the full harvest that results from this. And so we're going to pray, and then I'm going to walk you through a couple of things. Father, thank you for your great love. Thank you for showing us that it's not just about how we feel, but that we respond in love. Thank you for showing us that you're so impractical in the way that you love us. But it's so beautiful. So God, I pray that you'd help us to not be overwhelmed by need, but to be set free by recognizing that there are certain needs that you have given us opportunity in. And so that you would empower us to be free enough to begin to get our hands around those opportunities that we do have. And we give you thanks. Amen. So